Hey guys, today I want to talk about A Perfect Couple. Look, I'm just going to say this from the jump. I had high hopes for this series. I thought it'd be excellent. Absolutely stacked cast, like a White Lotus level cast. We have Megan Fahey from The White Lotus. We have Nicole Kidman, one of the greatest actresses of all time. We have Liev Schreiber, a great actor. We have Jack Reynor from Midsommar. We have Dakota Fanning, stacked cast. Eve Hewson, brilliant actress. And unfortunately, they were not given an amazing script. I think this show has so much potential. All we needed this to be was another rich white satire. Everybody loves those. We've had Big Little Lies, we've had White Lotus, we've had Succession, we've had Saltburn. Like, this is a constant thing that audiences lately love, right? This deconstruction of the perfect ideal family. And this show had everything going for it. And in my opinion, it just didn't come together all that well. So I want to talk about what did work in this series, what didn't work in this series. This video is going to work best if you have seen the show. If you haven't seen the show, thank you for watching. I hope this is an enjoyable video. But let's just get right into it. So first off, things I appreciated. I really did like that we didn't know who was murdered until the end of the first episode or the start of the second episode. They kept that from us for a while. I thought that was a really cool idea. So you got two mysteries, right? You got who was murdered and then you got who did the murder. That was really cool. Really liked that. I also liked that it was actually a notable actress. It was Megan Fahey. It wasn't like some minor supporting actor or actress that was kind of a predictable choice to kill off. Like, this is a big name that you've chosen to kill off in episode 1. Cool idea. Did not see that coming. I really did like in the middle chunk, I thought there was some really good character work. I was enjoying what they were doing with the relationship between Tag and Greer. I thought Tag's cheating and the breakdown of their relationship was probably the most well-written and interesting stuff in the show. Aside from that, though, unfortunately, I thought the rest of the characters in this show were great concepts. They were great ideas, but not fully executed. I think a character like Jack Raynor's character, right, the guy from Midsommar, is excellent, And I think he doesn't need much more to his character. He's just like the dickhead brother, fine. But a character like Benji just felt so paper thin. He is one of the main players. He is the partner of our main character, of our protagonist, Amelia. And I just had no clue really what made him tick. It is just paper thin, rich satire. He's, the son of Nicole Kidman and Liev Schreiber, and he thinks he's different to the rest of them, but really deep down he's not. And he's going to make Amelia sign an NDA. It's just stuff we've seen before, unfortunately. And I think there's a really interesting scene where Benji and Amelia go to be intimate, and she basically wants to have sex in a way that is kind of like a quickie, right? Not very intimate, facing away, right? And he wants to be, face to face, really intimate, and the sexual escapade kind of like fizzles out there and they stop. And I thought the writing here was really interesting, and it's the most depth we get for this relationship. You later find out that that is almost definitely because her heart is tied to Shooter. And that's a really interesting idea. That is one of the few moments where I thought the writing actually gave the audience something to figure out and sit with. But aside from that, everything was just really paper thin. You don't really get a great sense into what makes Benji tick. And, when Benji finds out that she's had an affair with Shooter, his reaction initially is compelling, but you don't really find out much more than that. And that's my biggest issue with this show is big things happen, and after getting all this character work with all these different characters, you don't really get a sense of how they feel. For example, right? Tag, you get some really interesting character work with Tag and his affairs and what makes him tick and why he cheats on Greer. So, credit to the writers, they did a good job there. However, you don't really get an insight into how he feels that inadvertently him not being more careful with having sex with Megan Fahey's character led to her death, right? He accidentally got her pregnant, which led to her being killed so the inheritance didn't get delayed by 18 years. And he doesn't seem particularly fazed. And that's fine. Like, if that's the point, like he's too much of a rich, arrogant scumbag to care. If that was the point, I would give credit to the show, but I feel like they couldn't decide what they really wanted him to feel. And I feel like we didn't have much insight. There's never a monologue or a moment where he cracks it at a character and goes, oh, she's just another girl. I don't really care, yada, yada, yada. Like, we don't really know how he feels. And yes, you could make the argument that for him, it's kind of convenient that she got snuffed, right? Because that saves him from having to deal with an unwanted pregnancy and what that means for Greer and him. But like, I just didn't really get a feel of how that felt. On top of that, though, Jack Rayner's character, right, Dakota Fanning's partner, we don't really get a sense of how he feels about the fact that Dakota Fanning, his wife, was the one that actually murdered Megan Fahey's character. He doesn't seem particularly fazed or confronted. He kind of just goes, oh, okay. And again, you can make the point that this is all the point, right? These rich people are just completely out of touch and don't care. But we've seen throughout the show that they really do care about their reputation. When things aren't going right, it really does fluster them. And yeah, I just felt like we needed more of that, because the ending of the show was really strange to me. Instead, the focus of the actual ending, the last 5 to 10 minutes, is on the relationship between Greer, Nicole Kidman's character, and Amelia, Eve Houston's character. And the show kind of wraps up in this way where Nicole Kidman says, oh, I've written my new book about the friendship between you and your best friend who was murdered. And this felt so out of place to me for a few reasons. First off, I didn't think we got enough time between Amelia and her best friend, the woman who was murdered, to really get a sense of how close they were. In fact, throughout the season, I really struggled to feel how affected Amelia was. We got a bit in the early episodes, but in the back 3 to 4 episodes, it really felt like she was a bit detached from the whole situation, and not in an intentional, well-written way where it's like she's just so overwhelmed by this family's detachment that she also becomes detached. It just seems like she was more preoccupied with her affair with Shooter, and the murder, the woman who was murdered, felt like a bit of an afterthought. It didn't feel like this, you know, oh my God, I brought my best friend into this fucked up family and now she's been murdered. We really didn't get a sense of that. And she seemed more wrapped up in her kind of love triangle. I thought the beef between Greer and Amelia had the most dramatic potential, had the most interesting dynamics, and was the most interesting moments for Nicole Kidman as Greer to be this kind of ice queen mother who clearly is scared of losing her child to the wife and kind of wants to sabotage that relationship. And it's really interesting writing that Amelia actually gives her reason to not like her. Amelia is cheating on Benji with Shooter. I think that was the most interesting stuff in the show for me, the fact that it wasn't just cut and dry. You know, Nicole Kidman's distrust of Amelia was actually substantiated at different points. However, the ending here where Greer comes up to Amelia and is like, yeah, you know, the true perfect couple is you and your best friend who was murdered. I've written a book about that. Like, I really just care about you guys, and you guys were so inspiring. I'm like, are you serious? Like, we barely saw this. It just felt so not well earned, in my opinion. It was really disappointing. While we're talking about things I didn't love, the opening credit sequence is a fucking abomination. I am so sorry. I know what they're going for. I really know what they're going for. I've seen a lot of comments being like, oh my God, this is so much fun. I absolutely love the vibe. Don't love that interpretation. What I think this should have been was, you know, this is a show dealing with a murder, you know, dealing with rich white people's detachment to, you know, the problems that the rest of the world faces, and the fact that they're even detached in the face of murder. And I think what this dance sequence should have represented is the idea that, like, even though this horrific shit is happening, they're still dancing. But it just doesn't really land, because the rest of the show isn't dark enough for this kind of dance sequence to feel like a great contrast, but it also isn't such an effective satire that it feels like part of the satire. It just feels really strange. And also on top of that, it's in universe, you know. Nicole Kidman has been on the interview circuit basically talking about the fact that she didn't like the dance sequence initially as the intro crawl because she felt like Greer wouldn't dance.
Well, what went through your mind when they told you you were going to be dancing for that title sequence?
I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And then the director was like, you have to do it.
Let's talk about the dance sequence. Were you on the WhatsApp group saying you didn't want to do it?
Yeah, we all were except for Liev.
Yeah, Liev said like he was so into it, which I was kind of surprised.
Did that?
And he showed me he did a slide.
Yeah.
Why didn't you want to do it? You're a dancer.
No, because I didn't feel like Greer would dance. I felt like Greer would watch, but
What did you think in the end?
danced as Greer.
And I agree. And Nicole Kidman's interpretation here tells us that this dance sequence isn't just the cast dancing. This is meant to be our characters getting along and dancing. It just feels strange. It just feels strange. I think in better hands, it would have felt like the dance at the end of Saltburn. The reason I say that is Saltburn is a dark, depraved, rich person, darkly funny satire. It is equal parts funny and horrifying. And if you've seen that movie, at the end of that movie, someone who's done a bunch of awful shit ends up dancing around the halls of a mansion naked. And it's hilarious because of the fucked up stuff that we've seen happen. And I think that's what A Perfect Couple's opening dance sequence really should have been going for. Or it should have been really sinister feeling and like, oh my God, like Tag's dancing with these two women that he's been sleeping with, and Greer's watching from the sidelines, and everyone's eye lines who are connected are meeting. But instead it's just this dumb, tonally confused, distracting intro sequence, in my opinion. You're watching a show that's trying to take this murder mystery seriously and isn't soaked in satire. So when you get this opening dance sequence, it just feels really strange. It does not kind of match the icy veneer that Nicole Kidman's character and Amelia's character has, in my opinion, which is really a shame. Seeing Amelia and Greer, who are both really tortured women, dancing that way, like I just can't picture them getting that into it, given who these characters are. It would have worked a lot better if Greer was kind of watching from the side, observing everyone's relationship. Amelia is maybe dancing to fit in, but she doesn't quite. I think Merritt dancing worked, but aside from that, really Jack Rayner's character is going to do a goofy choreographed dance? Really? But also, can you imagine how much more effective it would have been if you have this really like surreal dance sequence and then it hard cuts from like sunny dance sequence, hard cuts to like Black of Night, and it's just Megan Fahey's body, Merritt's character's body, just like in the middle of the sand with everyone else gone. Then the opening sequence I would have loved, but like, no, it just feels really, really strange and totally confused and like, oh, isn't this like fun? And it's like, no. If every single character was like Jack Rayner's character, the guy from Midsommar, right? I think it would work a bit better. But yeah, I do not think it fit the tone of the show, especially when the show tries and ends with this like overly schmaltzy, like, yeah, I wrote a book about the relationship you had with Megan Fahey's character, the woman that was murdered. I'm like, are you serious? Is that where you're going to end it? We needed more time to see each character kind of, revel in the fact that this person, Dakota Fanning, murdered Megan Fahey. But we really didn't get a sense of how these characters felt. I thought the character work with Tag in the middle chunk of this show was excellent. Unfortunately, I was left wanting a lot more from Nicole Kidman. Now, I want to say this from the start. I love Nicole Kidman, especially her turn in Killing of a Sacred Deer by Yorgos Lanthimos. That was awesome. I also loved her performance in Big Little Lies, but I feel like she's been doing a lot more of these Netflix projects and they're starting to have kind of diminishing returns. I think what this show needed was Rosamund Pike from Saltburn. I think that kind of rich Ice Queen matriarch is such a better portrayal. It's equal parts empathetic and funny and nasty. She'll say things where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. But you still kind of like her and you get why she's successful.
Oliver, I have a complete and utter horror of ugliness. Ever since I was very young. I don't know why. I was a lesbian for a while, But it was all just too wet for me in the end. Men are so lovely and dry.
But she came from Greece. She had a thirst for knowledge. It couldn't have been me. I'd never wanted to know anything.
I thought the stuff with Nicole Kidman's character was really paper thin. I did kind of like the revelation that her and Tag met when she was actually a sex worker. I found that really interesting, but this is one of my other big issues with the show is I've seen a lot of the people in the press tour talk about the fact that like, oh, it's this perfect couple, Greer and Tag, this incredibly well-perceived couple. But beneath the surface, it's actually dark and fractured and there's cheating and there's all these secrets going on in the family. And as the show goes on, you find these out. I'm just going to say it. If they wanted to pull that off, they really needed to kind of let us see how this family is seen from the outside, because the show starts And they're all fucked up. It's not a surprise that Jack Rayner's character is like a pill-popping psycho. Everyone suspects that Amelia isn't a great fit, and the reveal that she's cheating is very heavily forecasted from the jump. But on top of that, we find out about Tag's cheating very, very early. On top of that, the whole family knows about Tag's cheating already. Like, all these secrets that are revealed to us are things that the family already knows. Like, the family already knows that they're all fucked up. And yes, you can make the argument that the big deal is that the world is going to find out that this family is messed up, but not really, because the person that ended up murdering Megan Fahey's character wasn't part of the original family, wasn't part of the bloodline. It's Dakota Fanning who married into the bloodline and presumably now will be exiting the bloodline, right? So yes, you can make the argument that Tag and Greer split up and that's, dissolving the perfect couple. But I guess the issue for me was, as an audience, I wanted to be taken on a journey of watching this perfect veneer fall apart. That's kind of what the trailer was selling. That's what the press tour was selling. But you start the show and they're already fucked, and everyone knows that they're already really messed up and conniving and schemy. Everyone knows that, yeah, Jack Rayner's character is misogynistic and annoying and, dude finance bro. Even the cops know. While we're talking about the cops, the humor was not landing with that lead detective, the woman. I don't know what they were going for here, but that needed better writing. And it's a shame because at points, I think this show achieved some really good black comedy. I loved when Dakota Fanning was being arrested and she was like, I can't be arrested. I'm pregnant.
I can't go to jail. I'm pregnant.
I also thought the whole sequence with Jack Rayner's character and Dakota Fanning's character trying to take the wedding cake after basically the wedding wasn't going ahead was actually really well written, really funny, and kind of worked in that rich person satire that I was expecting and hoping for. I also thought the arguments between Amelia and Greer were really interesting. I particularly liked the one where Greer was telling Amelia that if she wanted to be part of the family, she should dress up and get ready for the family photo. And I was actually on Greer's side for that. While we're talking about that kind of conflict, I thought the rich person satire in this show was really thin. Now, I don't expect everything to be Succession or White Lotus levels of writing, but at least Saltburn. We didn't get any interesting scenes like the egg scene from Saltburn. This show ultimately just ended up with like, oh, rich people bad sort of vibes, and I thought the writing was really thin. And obviously, I'm not mad if the show writers want to make a eat the rich sort of show, but I would have preferred some more kind of insight into why Amelia has a inherent distaste for these types of things. It just felt like really thin writing to me. The only big, real, interesting, juicy exploration I found was the whole NDA culture that they had in the family. I thought that was one of the few things that I thought was appropriately horrific and dark and interesting to explore through Amelia's eyes. But aside from that, I actually thought Amelia needed to get a bit more on board, particularly with the family photo. Yes, Greer is a bit of an ice queen, but it's if you want to be part of Benji's family, get with the program. And I know that the point was she doesn't really want to be a part of Benji's family because she kind of has the hots for Shooter. But if that's the case, I don't really have much empathy for her. I don't think this really works as a massive eat the rich satire if our core character is cheating on Benji, who up until this week seems to be quite a good partner. You know what I mean? Yes, obviously some dark things come out from Benji during this week, and the way he kind of is complicit with his family's behavior is really fucked up, but she was cheating on him before knowing that. Our core character isn't great either, and it kind of muddies the satire. Really, the ultimate victim of this show is Megan Fahey's character, who is murdered, but the show doesn't really spend much time making us empathize and really feel bad for her, unfortunately. What happened to her is awful. She was accidentally impregnated by Tag. He then goes, yo, I don't want your baby, after getting her excited and being like, I do want your baby. And then Dakota Fanning snuffs her off, because Dakota Fanning doesn't want to wait for the inheritance or the trust fund, sorry. And it's like, that's such an interesting idea, but we really didn't know much about, was it Merritt, Megan Faye's character? We really didn't know much about her and what makes her tick. And all of this adds up to a show that's like a decent 6 out of 10. Like, I do tell people to watch this show if they're interested, if they want something light and fun to watch over the weekend. But my issue with this show is I feel like it could have been fantastic. Like, every single kind of plot thread it followed, with each character potentially being the culprit, could have been a lot more interesting. Like, I didn't have a sense of relief when certain characters were or weren't found to be complicit or non-complicit. Like, I really liked Tag, even though he's like obviously a shitty partner. I found him an entertaining character. But when he was being interrogated for the murder of Merritt, I wasn't particularly relieved when he was found to be not guilty, or, kind of concerned for him. And I found that to be the case with every single character. In fact, even though it would have been really predictable if it was Nicole Kidman's character, I would have found that at least a bit more interesting or satisfying character-wise. But I think the fact that it was Dakota Fanning and we don't get even Jack Rayner's reaction to how he feels about his wife getting locked up, and the fact that his newborn baby is going to be born in jail. Like, we don't find out anything. The show just cuts off the moment the mystery ends. We don't even get a sense to what her sentence is. Nothing. Now, you could make the argument that it's meant to be a bottle show, right? It's only meant to take place on this little week-long getaway on this estate. But it's like, we then jump 6 months later to when Greer meets Amelia in London. So it's like, you could have then given us more insights into what happened to the rest of the characters, because the way the show ends, you're just kind of like, oh, why did we spend time with so many characters? And unfortunately, as much as I love Eve Hewson as an actress, I thought she wasn't given much to do in this show. She is the main character. I think she's the protagonist rather than Greer, but I think Greer was given a lot more to do. Tag was given a lot more to do. Even Jack Rayner's character, the fuckboy guy, was given a lot more to do. But unfortunately, Benji and Amelia feel like afterthoughts when they are kind of the main focus of the show, at least initially. And it's just really frustrating, because I think this is a lot more forgivable if this was a book. And this was a book, right? I think if this was a book you picked up, ironically, at the airport, like they discuss in this show, right? And you read it over 3 hours, you'd just be like, oh yeah, what was I expecting? It was a fun little page turner with paper-thin characters, but a decent little mystery. Who cares? But when this is a 6-hour Netflix miniseries rather than a fun little 90-minute movie, and there's red carpet events and millions of dollars are spent on this, and this incredible cast comes together, this once-in-a-lifetime cast gets together and delivers like something that's just perfectly fine, these issues are a bit more frustrating. I think as a book, this is probably fine. You just be like, okay, I spent $15 on it, it got me through the flight, whatever. But in my opinion, I think we deserve a bit more as, Netflix fans or TV fans and people that care about good casting and good writing. I think, yeah, we deserve more. And I think this show could have been a lot better with maybe better writers or a better director, dare I say. And it's a shame, because it looks like, in the last intro dance sequence, they had a lot of fun making this show. I think the director joins in on the dance. That's really sweet. But unfortunately, I do not think this show came together, which is really unfortunate, because, yeah, so many interesting ideas. There were these little moments I was really enjoying. I even loved seeing the kind of final confrontation between Tag and Merritt through different people's perspectives. We see it from Will's perspective. We see it from Dakota's perspective. It's really fun. I also thought Amelia stumbling across Merritt's body was a really well done scene. I thought all the interesting subplots about Amelia's parents and her cancer and her potential, suicidal ideation was really interesting. And I appreciate that the show tried to flesh out every character. I just think it needed to be tighter in terms of its editing and its writing and its execution. The cutaways to the interrogation where random strangers are talking about their perceptions of the couple. So, for example, the French lady and the maid and that gay guy are all talking about what they think of the family. These were so bad. They were so much worse than the ones in Big Little Lies, and they were clearly going for a similar tone to the ones in Big Little Lies. That had incredible cutaways where, you know, someone would be talking about like, oh, this couple has an incredible sex life, and then it would cut to someone having a terrible sex life, or these people are always really well dressed, and then it would cut to someone looking schlubby. It was really a great source of like information in terms of how the characters saw the family, and also a contrast to what the family actually was. Whereas in this show, just the writing was really clunky, the jokes weren't landing, and I thought it was actually kind of cringe. And it's like, I can tell you've been inspired by Big Little Lies, but this is not Big Little Lies. On top of that, if I can nerd out, some of the shots in this show were just like not in focus. There were scenes where it would cut from one character and the color grading was really good, and it would cut to another character and it was really grainy. It was like it wasn't in focus or something. I'm not sure exactly what went wrong here. Someone with more technical insight probably knows, but just like no shot cohesion. On top of that, there were some moments where it was clearly trying to be intense, but the framing was just distracting and painful in terms of how close it was to someone's face, and there were things obscuring, and not in a really creative like The Big Short sort of way, just in a really clunky, frustrating way. And yeah, I'm just disappointed because when this show was working, it was really working for me. I really enjoyed probably episode 2, 3, and 4. But around that, I thought this show was a bit of a struggle, in my opinion. Regardless, those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you'd like me to talk about next, and have a lovely day.